Greetings. My name is John Savers. I am the candidate pro tempore of the emerging People's Party, which plans to take possession of governance of the United States of America in 2012. The discussions of the past, in past episodes, have revealed a primary policy of the People's Party, which is the issuance of full legal tender currency, dollars, which would be a function of the Department of the Treasury and the Bureau of the Mint, and these would be issued into the domestic economy in various ways. This currency would be the only legal currency for the payment of debts, taxes, penalties, and the purchase of property that is legally recognized. The Federal Reserve notes would not be lawful money for any of these purposes. It would probably still exist for the purchasing and sale of international stocks and so forth of that sort. However, in the nation, there would not be any international companies per se. That is, we would see the party helping to ignite a new industrial America to produce products for the nation, for the citizen, that are positive in all ways, such as electric vehicles and so forth, and to spur entrepreneurial accomplishments for the betterment of the society. This full legal tender currency would be the means by which this would all be achieved. And in the process, we would institute a monitoring facility, probably within the Department of the Treasury, whose sole function would be to gauge the currency in terms of the population, production, and so forth, to try to keep a constant relative value, and when and if there were either too much currency or too little, in the former case, there would be excise taxes that might be instituted to help drain away the currency. And in the latter, perhaps dividends to bring the desired currency level back to the desired points. I think that the People's Party policy toward resources, natural resources such as coal and timber and so forth, should be that these natural resources are desirable to be sort of controlled by the government as a people's inheritance. This doesn't mean that if you own property with timber on it, that timber would belong to the government, but it would mean that the government would make a market for this particular resource, a fair and just price for commodities, whether timber or coal or wheat or corn or oil, and so forth, would be determined and set and purchased by the government and stored. These raw materials would then be vended to entrepreneurs for the purpose of building those things they need to build, which might then be sold to other companies to finish into a product, or sold, if it were a product, directly to the people. At any rate, we feel that this would be a fair and just way to do. We would attempt, we think the function of the government is to keep an even table in so much as competition goes, so forth. The government would sort of operate as referees, umpires, and so forth in these matters. It is entirely usual for American society, as we understand games and so forth we like, that there be someone to sort of oversee the rules, see that they're kept. We do not believe that monopolies and cartels and that sort of thing should be allowed, but rather that an attempt be made to have as much competition as feasible in a particular industry. And for that reason, the government custodian of the resources would not sell to any given company more than, say, 10% of any product during a year, or perhaps less. That would be a decision to be made ultimately by experts in the area. But the main thing is that without some sort of limitation in regard to what one company can achieve, inevitably companies would seize as much as possible and try to achieve a monopoly. So that has to be discouraged. We do have in the People's Party the notion that economy of scale concepts in no way should preempt the concept of competition within the domestic economy. Also, it must be said that the people themselves should be looked upon as a resource, both their minds and their physical bodies and so forth. And for that reason, the nation's government has an interest in education, which I'll talk about perhaps in another episode. But suffice it to say that a well-tuned mind, an educated mind, is an asset. A skilled, vocationally trained individual is an asset. And that is something that should be sought. I do favor a good deal more liberty granted to teachers to teach as they see fit. That is that there should be more autonomy granted to teachers. When I was a child, the schools were just in the process of being consolidated, and principalism and uniformity and so forth were all coming to the nigh in terms of concepts that would be imposed on the educational system. We think it's better to have teachers who are, we feel, dedicated generally, given autonomy to educate the children as they think is suited, and to have interaction with parents directly in regard to these matters, rather than to have the teacher have these kinds of matters imposed upon them by principals and school systems and boards of education, and by textbooks which are uniform throughout the country and so forth. A textbook may be one used by everyone, but it can also be a kind of a jumping off point for the teacher to elaborate, to expand upon, and so forth as the teacher saw fit. and bringing in other matters, other educational tools, including books and so forth, which may aid in that endeavor. We don't think that it's a good idea for all the citizens to respond as one to any and all questions posed as almost a Pavlovian response from the educational background. So we do see the citizen as a natural resource. I think also that the health of the citizen should be viewed in a way similar to that. And we think that, and we'll talk on the health aspect also in a subsequent episode. But suffice it to say that the good health of the citizen is a resource to the nation and should be protected as much as possible. And therefore there would be zero tolerance of controlled substances, and we would instruct the military to prepare to invade either Mexico or Canada, and to seize territory, expelling the former nationals, and to make what amounts to a no man's land, a territorial occupied military zone, to interdict the flow of drugs into this country, and to continue pushing further and further until there is no more coming into this country through those means. We would also treat the Caribbean countries in much the same way. I think it also would be useful to have a merchant marine which would both carry the commodities that the nation uses in swap deals with other countries for other commodities, and that our ports basically be for our ships, and that there be a kind of a neutral new ports established in both the Atlantic and Pacific, such as the Midway Islands, to receive any sort of goods from abroad, where they could also be inspected before being transferred to American merchant ships to be taken to the contiguous 48. And some sort of similar island in the Atlantic could also be used for that purpose, and so forth. I think that we would not want to have foreign dignitaries in America, the ambassadors and so forth, and that an island would be established for diplomatic relations, and that would be better for all concerned. We don't think that the foreign dignitaries would have a whole lot of interest for America as it turns to improve itself, rather than to weaken itself in a global complex of debt, and to denude the citizens of the United States of any effective voice in what goes on in their society, as within the context of the globe. It's a relatively small population. So these are some of the ideas that I think that the People's Party will refine and offer to the public.